went through this process going back to last spring when I first sat down with him and his parents to talk about exactly where he was, where we thought we could get him. Knew we'd have a decision to make. Really kept them in the loop as much as we could. Talked to his parents several times throughout the course of the year. Trey came in as I expected after the end of the regular season, and we sat down, jointly filled out the information. I did a telephone conference with his father. Said we'd wait for the grades. We got our grades in on, I believe I was notified on the 1st. Last Friday afternoon, I flew over to Alabama with myself and Coach Herbert, sat down, went through about 15 documents with Trey and his mom and dad that had the information that I'd gathered for him to make an informed decision, and thankfully he notified us shortly thereafter and said he wanted to maintain and pursue his dream of playing and chasing his dreams here at Arkansas for another year. We'll be able to get his degree and hopefully move his draft status up that much more for the future. And with that, open it up for some questions.
Okay, if you have questions, press *1.
Hey, Brad, this is Tom Murphy. Happy New Year.
Hey, Tom.
And,
thank you.
Hey, you flew to Alabama. Is that something you do typically with guys that are having to make that decision?
It is. One of the things I've learned during my time as a head coach is, these decisions are life changers. They're game changers. And what I try to do is be upfront and honest with his parents as well as the young man that we're dealing with. Sometimes in the past it's been easier for me just to, obviously we could just drive across, but I got permission from Jeff Long earlier, hey, when this decision comes through, this is something that we need to do in person, face-to-face. So very glad I did. I know it meant a lot to Trey and his parents, and just gave that much more touch to what we're selling. It's not, I told him, hey, if this thing came back a first-rounder, I'll pack your bags for you and wish you best of luck. 2 or 3, we got some decisions to make, and it was about doing it the right way, treating people with respect, and I think it's definitely something that in the long run is hopefully going to be able to benefit everybody involved.
Well, and then when he had to factor in his decision, the unknown of who's going to be the D-line coach, can you update us on if you've talked to anybody, where you stand there?
Yeah, excited. There's been a great pool of candidates that I had before this even opened up, and added some people to it. We don't start live recruiting again until January 16th. There was a number of guys that I had to work through, some of which that weren't involved in bowl games, and I had to wait till the end of the NFL regular season for me to talk to a few people. So I've had some on campus here. Feel very excited about the pool that we got. I don't know if it's going to be nailed down in the next 24 or 48, or it could be all the way till next week, but it's going to be a great candidate, and it's going to be someone that will help us win ball games. In particular reference to Trey and the other D linemen, and actually the recruits that I'm dealing with, I always think that transition is an opportunity to improve. Coach Partridge was a tremendous football coach, a very, very good friend, someone that we'd won a lot of games, a lot of championships, but my intent and goal is to make us better with his departure, and that's always going to be my focus.
Brett, this is Nate Allen.
Hey, Nate.
What was, as far as the decisions that Trey made, just kind of what advice did you put at the end, and was there much of an influence with Coach Partridge leaving that you had to kind of reassure him that things would continue on a good level?
I think one of the great things that I've enjoyed during my tenure as a head coach, not just here but obviously at Wisconsin, was building relationships with our players. You have position coaches that are looking out for your best interest and your guidance when it comes to the field of play, and how to take on a block, how to react to a scheme. A position coach is exactly what we put them in place for: develop a relationship and look out for their well-being. I knew Charlie was very, very well liked. I know Trey and him had a great relationship, but Trey also understands the bigger picture. When I sat down with Trey, it's not the first time I'd sat down with him and his family. We did it as a meeting previously with his parents. I'd had several phone calls with them as well. Trey just concentrated on doing a great job this year. I had several phone calls with his dad, and then I sat down and went through, I believe, 13 different documents of information that I'd gathered from both previous experiences to information that pertains. I actually, the day that I flew to Alabama, sat down and counted the 39 underclassmen that had come out in the draft already, and projected. Last year there was, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, last year in the NFL draft there were 78 underclassmen. 73 that had come out in 2013. There were 65 in 2012, 56 in 11, 53 in 2010, and 46 in 2009. In 2014, when we met on Friday afternoon, there were 39 kids that had already declared, and probably going to jump somewhere close to 80 by the time it was all said and done. And how much that affects his draft status. I laid out a program that will allow him to graduate next December, so that when he gets done playing here at Arkansas, he'll have his degree in hand. I then went through a spring schedule that'll lay out our 15 practices, what practices I expect him to be involved with. Ben Herbert then went through about 12 documents about what he could do for him physically, some before and after pictures about what he's going to grow into the next 6 months, as well as in combine testing, where he is and where we can get him by this time a year from now. 59 weeks from now, he'll be a different human being. And then I took back over and went through 6 national awards that we're going to push him for, from Lombardi to Gursky and Bednarik to Hendricks, All-American teams and SEC teams. Some of the stats that he shares unique to him with returning players in the SEC. A media plan that we have with him, with Zach Higbee, to make sure that we try to get everything in order for him to be recognized the best way possible. Then I went through a fall camp schedule of 28 practices, what we'll have him involved with, what ones we'll hold him out from. And then I went through a page of just what I can do as a head coach, from what I see him being as possibly a team captain. He's going to have a new defensive line coach. We'll allow him to grow in many ways so that he's not afraid of transition. We're going to try to use him in certain situations, possibly as a tight end and goal line, short yardage, red zone packages, somewhat what we did with J.J. Watt in the past. Some things I can help him with in the future about NFL agents, NCAA insurance deal, and being featured on the SEC network. Some things that would build his exposure because he's deserving of it, and just some general thoughts about him being a human being, about what I think he can accomplish.
Brett, the other question I had was with about the way he and Chris Smith complemented each other for the last 2 years. Just how do you what do you expect out of some of the Lewises and Winstons, and maybe a guy on Dietrich, but maybe also a guy like Tevin Beanham?
Well, I think it's a great point, Nate. One of the things I shared with him, in this past year, he was part of a dual tandem that got a lot of attention. I go back to SEC media days when they were talking about Chris and Trey and the combination in the SEC maybe being one of the better two out there, and it's a spotlight he had to share. With the other two defensive tackles graduating, Robert Thomas getting an invite into the combine, and Chris as well. I think this shows that whatever jump that D-line makes is going to be a huge part by what Trey does, how he plays and how he handles that, as well as making the players around him play well. So that's one thing we said to him, that you got to be the leader, not only amongst our defensive line, but our defense, as well as our program. I think overall, he's a guy, I don't want to put the weight of the world on someone, but he may be a guy that is forever remembered as one of the guys that was a huge turning point, a huge part of us turning this program back around into what we all want. I think Jermichael Winston, I think Dietrich Wise, I think Brendan Lewis, as well as Tevin Beanham, an incoming freshman defensive end, as well as a couple other guys, are going to give us some real competition, which I think brings the best out of people. They got a great leader in Trey, and hopefully some really good things to come.
Hey, Brett, it's Murphy again. Can you give an indication how many guys interviewed on campus? Just are you narrowing it down to finalists, or just how close you are?
I've probably talked to over 15 candidates. I kind of broke it down into three different areas. There's guys that were long-time college coaches. There's guys that are, absolutely guys that are not only in our conference but other BCS-type conferences that I know, I've been acquainted with. Some of them reached out to me, and then there's an NFL pool of guys that had previous college experience and expressed an interest to get back into it. So I'm kind of sorting it all through. The part that is unique is I have to make a pretty conscientious decision because Charlie had been with me so long, he wore so many different hats. If Charlie worked with our D-line, but he also worked with our kickers. So if I want to combine those two again, it's a very unique pool, one that's out there and one that's good. But if I hire a coach that's just a strictly defensive line coach, then I'm going to have to absorb those duties or responsibilities or assign them to another member of our staff, and that's kind of been a work in progress for me to get the details through. But we've had a couple. What have we had? We've had 2 on campus, as well as I've interviewed some people off campus.
Hey, Brett, this is Robbie Neiswanger. Just wondering about the other coaches on your staff. I know there have been some rumblings about maybe some other guys interviewing other spots. Have you gotten any indication anybody else is leaving?
I hire a good staff. I think the world of them as coaches. To this point, have not been contacted and have not had any of my coaches reach out to me. The rumor mill is an awesome thing. I get, I've become very close, obviously, to not only some of you guys, our own beat writers, but beat writers across the country. And I usually respond to every one of the questions I get just because I don't want false information out there. I know right away a certain number of my coaches were affiliated or connected to other jobs, and would find it comical when I would respond to them and ask them if there's any truth, because they would be as shocked as I was with the information. I got one yesterday that told me I had interviewed a D-line coach and wanted to know if my offer was out there, and I didn't even know the name that they asked about. So there's probably a lot of truth, a lot of distance between truth and reality in the coaching world. But I have not, to answer your question, I have not had anybody inquire about anybody else within my staff. I should say that's full-time coaches. I am unfortunately losing some of my special teams quality control. Chris Hurd joined Charlie Partridge, as well as another one of our GAs probably will, and then Brian Early joined the Arkansas State staff. So some transition, which is great amongst those young coaches. It's some things we really look forward to.
All right, Coach, that'll wrap it up for today. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it. Go Hogs.